Admiral Vexitar stood on the bridge of his massive warship. His 4 black eyes stared at the strange object floating in space ahead of them. The thing looked like junk to him. It was made of ugly metal pieces stuck together like a child's toy. Nothing about it seemed dangerous or important. "What is that thing?" Vexitar asked his officer. Commander Zeflak looked at his computer screen. His insect-like face showed disgust. "It is a human ship, Admiral. Very old. Maybe 200 years. Old. The computer says it has no power, no life signs. It looks completely dead." Vexitar made a sound like laughing. Humans were new to space travel. When his people had been flying between stars for thousands of years, humans were still stuck on their home planet. Their ships were famous for being ugly and poorly made. Everyone in the galaxy knew this. "What is the ship's name?" he asked. "USS Liberty, sir. Our records show it was used for long trips into deep space. Humans built these ships to explore far from home. They were not very good at it." The Admiral looked at the ship through his window. It was exactly what he expected from humans. The metal hull was dented and burned from space rocks. Some parts looked like they had been fixed with whatever materials the crew could find. It was shaped like a big box instead of the smooth, beautiful ships that advanced races built. "Is it worth anything?" Vexitar asked. "Not much, Admiral. Old human technology is very basic, but the metal might be worth something if we melt it down." Vexitar nodded. His empire had been taking over this part of space for months. They collected old ships and built supply stations. One more piece of space garbage would not matter much, but metal was metal. "Send soldiers to board it," he ordered. "Take everything useful and then destroy the rest. Be careful, though. These old human ships fall apart easily. I do not want anyone hurt when it breaks." Small attack ships left the Admiral's vessel and flew toward the dead human ship. Vexitar watched them go, then turned to look at his star maps. The humans had left this area long ago. They went back to safer space when stronger alien races moved in. Their old ships sometimes turned up floating empty in forgotten places. The USS Liberty hung still in the darkness. It showed no lights, no movement, no signs of life. Its engines were cold. Its weapons were silent. Every machine the aliens used to scan it said the same thing. This was a dead ship that had been floating here for years. But the aliens were wrong. Deep inside the ship, in its most protected areas, old systems were waking up. Computers that had been sleeping for decades felt the alien ships getting closer. Warning signals that had been quiet started to flash. Power lines that had been empty began to carry small amounts of electricity. And in the ship's deepest rooms, machines that had been keeping humans alive in frozen sleep for over 100 years started their wake-up process. The aliens had made their first big mistake. They thought that quiet meant dead. They thought that still meant empty. They were about to learn that humans were very different from what they expected. Inside the Liberty, Captain Jake Morrison lay in his sleeping pod. The machine that kept him frozen was slowly warming him up. His heart started beating faster. His brain began to work again. Around him, other pods were doing the same thing for his crew. The ship's computer, Atlas, had been watching and waiting for over a century. It knew that someday, someone might find the Liberty. It was built to handle this exact situation. The ship looked dead from outside, but inside, it was one of the most advanced vessels humans had ever built. Atlas began waking the crew because the aliens were now a threat. The boarding parties were getting closer. Soon they would try to enter the ship. When they did, they would discover that the old human relic was not what it seemed. Amy Foster, the ship's engineer, was the first to open her eyes. Her job was to keep all the ship's systems working. She was very good at her job. Ryan Clark, who controlled the ship's weapons, was waking up too. He was a soldier who had fought in many battles. "Atlas," Morrison said as he sat up in his pod. His voice was rough from sleeping so long. "What is happening?" "Good morning, Captain," the computer replied. "You have been asleep for 127 years. There are alien ships outside. They think we are dead. They are sending soldiers to board us." Morrison smiled. This was exactly the kind of situation the Liberty had been built for. The ship was designed to look weak and old while hiding incredible power. It was the perfect disguise for a spy mission. "How many alien ships?" he asked. 12 ships, Captain. 3 big warships, 6 destroyers, and 3 support vessels. They are from the Zephyrian Empire. They are known for attacking weaker species. Amy Foster checked her control panel. All the ship's secret systems were ready. The weapons that looked like communication equipment were charged. The armor that looked like simple metal plating was actually advanced protection. The engines that appeared broken could move the ship faster than anything the aliens had. They picked the wrong ship to mess with, Ryan Clark said as he prepared his weapons systems. Morrison stood up and stretched. He had been the captain of reconnaissance missions for 20 years before going into frozen sleep. His job was to take the Liberty into dangerous space, gather information about potential enemies, and bring that information back to Earth. The aliens outside had no idea what they were dealing with. "Atlas, are our systems ready?" Morrison asked. "All systems are functioning perfectly, Captain. The aliens cannot detect our true capabilities. To them, we still appear to be a powerless derelict." "Good. Let them board us. When they do, we will show them why it is dangerous to attack human ships." The Zephyrian soldiers were almost at the Liberty's hull. They carried cutting tools to break through the metal. They expected to find an empty ship full of old, worthless equipment. Instead, they were about to wake up one of humanity's most dangerous warships. Admiral Vextar watched from his bridge as his soldiers approached the human relic. He was thinking about other things, not paying much attention to what seemed like a simple salvage operation. He had no idea that he was about to make the biggest mistake of his military career. The USS Liberty waited in the darkness, looking helpless and abandoned. But inside, systems that had been sleeping for over a century were coming back to life. The ship was ready to show the galaxy that humans were far more dangerous than anyone realized. The aliens were about to learn why smart species in the galaxy had a saying, "Never wake a sleeping human warship." The first sign of trouble came when the alien boarding team stopped talking to their ship. Commander Ziflak stared at his computer screen with worry. His insect face showed confusion as he tried to contact his soldiers. "Admiral, we cannot reach the first boarding team." Admiral Vextar turned from his star charts. "Are their machines broken?" "I do not know, sir. They said they got inside the human ship, then nothing. Their life signs still show they are alive, but they will not answer our calls." The Admiral looked at the floating human ship on his screen. It still looked dead and empty. No lights, no power, no movement. "Send the second team, find the first team, and see what went wrong." What Vextar could not see was what was happening inside the USS Liberty. The first boarding team had cut through the outer metal walls easily with their plasma tools. They thought it would be simple to explore the dead ship. But as soon as they got inside, they found something very strange. The ship was not what it appeared to be. From outside, the Liberty looked like a simple box-shaped vessel. Inside, it was completely different. The hallways were longer than they should be. Rooms were bigger than the outside walls allowed. And everywhere, in the dim light of their helmet lamps, the alien soldiers saw technology that did not match anything in their databases. The boarding team had walked deeper into the ship following what seemed to be the main corridor. They were trying to report what they found when hidden gas canisters activated. The gas made them fall asleep instantly. Now they lay unconscious in the ship's medical bay, while the Liberty's systems watched over them. The USS Liberty had been built for dangerous spy missions in enemy territory. Her designers knew that someday, hostile aliens might try to board her. They had planned for exactly this situation. In the ship's central core, Captain Jake Morrison felt his body warming up as the sleeping machine brought him back to life. It was a slow process. First, his heart started beating normally. Then his mind began to work clearly. Around him, other sleeping pods were doing the same thing for his crew. "Atlas," Morrison said. His voice was rough from sleeping for so long. "Tell me what is happening." The ship's computer answered right away. Its voice sounded friendly and helpful. "Good morning, Captain. Today is April 15th, 2387. You have been asleep for 127 years, 4 months, and 18 days. Unknown alien forces are trying to board our ship. They are called the Zephyrian Empire." Morrison sat up slowly. His muscles felt stiff from the long sleep. Around him, his crew was waking up too. Amy Foster, his chief engineer, was already checking her control panels with the careful attention that made her the best at her job. Ryan Clark, his weapons officer, was looking at threat displays with the focused eyes of an experienced soldier. Zephyrians? Morrison asked. I have never heard of them. They appeared in this sector about 15 years ago, Atlas explained. Our databases show they are aggressive and like to expand their territory. They tend to think other species are weaker than they really are. They currently have 2 boarding parties trying to access our main systems. Amy Foster looked up from her controls. She was smiling with amusement and professional interest. They got through our outer hull pretty easily. Should we be worried? The outer hull was designed to look weak, Atlas replied. The current boarding parties have been neutralized using non-lethal sleep gas. However, the alien fleet has 12 ships, including 3 heavy battle cruisers. They have much more firepower than we appear to have. Morrison smiled. It was the same smile that had made him famous among spy ship crews throughout the human fleet. Atlas, how long has it been since we checked all our systems? All primary systems have been maintained in standby mode during your sleep period. Defensive systems are working at 97% efficiency. Offensive systems are working at 98% efficiency. Stealth systems are working at 100% efficiency. Ryan Clark was studying the tactical display. His expression grew more interested as he read the information. Captain, they think we are a dead ship. They have no idea what they are really dealing with. Morrison stood up, feeling his body remember the familiar rhythms of command. The USS Liberty had been humanity's most advanced spy ship when she launched over a century ago. Her mission had been simple but dangerous. Fly deep into unexplored space, gather intelligence about potential threats, and return with information that could keep humanity safe. The long sleep had been necessary for such a distant mission. What the Zephyrians saw as primitive construction was actually the most advanced stealth technology humanity had ever built. What looked like crude metal plating was actually adaptive, armor that could change itself to handle different types of attacks. What appeared to be desperate repairs were actually modular systems designed to be easily modified during missions. What do you recommend? Morrison asked his crew. Amy Foster grinned. We could always try explaining that they made a mistake. Ryan Clark shook his head. Based on their cultural profile, they will not listen. Zephyrians only respect strength, not talking. Morrison nodded. He had dealt with species like this before. Then I suppose we will have to show them that underestimating humans is dangerous. Atlas, bring all systems online. Let's show our guests what a real human warship can do. Throughout the USS Liberty, systems that had been sleeping for over a century began to hum with power. But from outside, the ship continued to look like nothing more than floating junk, showing no sign of the awakening happening inside. On the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Vextar was getting angry. 2 boarding teams had now gone silent inside the human wreck, and his sensors still showed nothing but a cold, dead hull floating in space. Sir, Commander Zeflak reported, the 3rd boarding team wants permission to use heavy cutting lasers. They say the inside of the ship is more complicated than they expected. Do it, Vextar replied sharply, and prepare a full salvage crew. I want that junk stripped and melted down within the hour. What the Admiral did not know was that every scan, every probe, every sensor beam his ships aimed at the USS Liberty was being analyzed and countered by systems far more advanced than anything the Zephyrians had. The Liberty's adaptive hull was already changing itself to give false readings, making the ship appear even more primitive and lifeless than before. Inside the Liberty, Captain Morrison was reviewing battle information with the calm professionalism that had made him one of humanity's most effective spy commanders. 12 ships, he said thoughtfully, studying the display. 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, 3 support vessels. Standard Zephyrian attack formation. Amy Foster looked up from her engineering station. Captain, their technology is actually quite good. More advanced than what we were dealing with when we first launched. Their energy weapons appear to be plasma-based, much more powerful than our original threat assessments predicted. Ryan Clark nodded seriously. In a direct fight, We would be outgunned about 50 to 1. Their heavy cruisers each have more firepower than an entire human battle group. Morrison smiled again. Good thing we are not planning a direct fight. Atlas, how effective is our stealth against their sensors? Current analysis shows 100% effectiveness, Captain. Their sensor technology is about 40 years behind our countermeasures. To their instruments, we continue to appear as a powerless wreck. Weapon status? All systems operational. Phantom torpedo tubes loaded and ready. Adaptive defense grid online. Quantum disruption cannon charging. Amy Foster grinned widely. I really love this ship. The USS Liberty had been designed around a simple idea. The best spy ship was one that could gather information without being seen, and if it was discovered, it could fight its way out of any situation. Her weapon systems used technology that humanity had been developing in secret for decades, designed to be far more effective than they appeared. Morrison activated the ship's communication system to talk to his entire crew. All hands, this is the captain. We have been asleep for over a century. The galaxy has changed a lot while we were gone, but our mission is still the same. Gather intelligence and survive. We are currently surrounded by a hostile alien fleet that thinks we are a defenseless wreck. Let's teach them about the dangers of underestimating humanity. All stations, prepare for battle. Throughout the ship, systems designed by humanity's best military engineers began their final startup sequences. The Liberty had been built to be the ultimate stealth spy vessel, but her designers had also made sure she could defend herself if stealth was not enough. The sleeping giant was finally awake, and it was ready to show the galaxy what humans could really do. Admiral Vextar was losing his patience. 3 boarding teams had now gone silent inside the human wreck, and his computer still showed nothing but a cold, dead ship floating in space. Sir, Commander Ziflak said nervously. The 4th boarding team wants to use the big plasma cutters. They say the ship's inside is much more complex than we thought. Do it, Vextar snapped, and get a full salvage crew ready. I want that piece of junk cut apart and processed in 1 hour. What the Admiral did not know was that every scan, every probe, every sensor beam his ships aimed at the USS Liberty was being studied and defeated by systems far more advanced than anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. The Liberty's smart hull was changing itself to give false readings, making the ship look even more dead and primitive than before. Inside the Liberty, Captain Morrison was looking at battle data with the calm experience that had made him one of humanity's best spy commanders. 12 ships, he said quietly, studying the display. 3 heavy battle cruisers, 6 destroyers, 3 support ships, standard Zephyrian attack pattern. Amy Foster looked up from her engineering controls. Captain, their technology is actually quite impressive. Much more advanced than what we faced when we first launched. Their plasma weapons look very powerful, much stronger than our old threat reports said. Ryan Clark nodded grimly. In a straight fight, they would crush us about 50 to 1. Each of their big cruisers has more guns than an entire human battle fleet. Morrison smiled calmly. Good thing we are not planning a straight fight. Atlas, how well can we hide from their sensors? Analysis shows 100% effectiveness, Captain. Their sensor technology is about 40 years behind our hiding systems. To their computers, we still look like a powerless wreck. What about our weapons? All systems ready to fire. Phantom torpedo tubes loaded. Adaptive defense grid online. Quantum disruption cannon charging to full power. Amy Foster grinned with excitement. I absolutely love this ship. The USS Liberty had been built around a simple but brilliant idea. The best spy ship was one that could gather secrets without being seen, and if enemies found it, the ship could fight its way out of any trouble. Her weapon systems used technology that humanity had been developing in secret for many years, designed to be much more deadly than they appeared. The quantum disruption cannon, for example, looked like a simple communication dish to most sensors. The phantom torpedo tubes were almost invisible even during close inspection, and the adaptive defense grid could change itself to stop specific types of weapons in real time. Morrison turned on the ship's internal communication system. All crew members, this is your captain. We have been asleep for over a century. The galaxy has changed greatly during our absence, but our mission stays the same. Gather intelligence and survive. We are now surrounded by a hostile alien fleet that believes we are a helpless wreck. Let's teach them about the dangers of underestimating humanity. All stations, prepare for combat operations. Throughout the ship systems designed by humanity's greatest military engineers began their final activation sequences. The Liberty had been built to be the ultimate stealth spy vessel, but her creators had also made sure she could defend herself when stealth was not enough. Outside, Admiral Vextar was becoming more frustrated with each passing minute. "Commander, why is this taking so long? It is just a primitive human hulk, not a fortress." "Sir, our boarding teams say the ship's internal design is very unusual. They are having trouble finding the main power systems. Then use the heavy plasma cutters. Cut the thing open like a can if you have to." That order would prove to be Admiral Vextar's biggest mistake. The moment the Zephyrian heavy cutters began charging their plasma beams, the USS Liberty's defensive systems registered the new threat. Adaptive armor plating shifted into new configurations. Quantum field generators came online with a low hum. And in the ship's command center, Captain Morrison gave the order that would change everything. "Atlas, drop the disguise, all hands battle stations." What happened next was spectacular. The ship that had looked like a battered, lifeless wreck suddenly blazed with brilliant power. Hull sections moved and reconfigured themselves, revealing weapon ports that had been hidden under adaptive plating. The ship's engines came alive with a bright flare of blue energy. And across every sensor display in the Zephyrian fleet, the USS Liberty announced itself as very much alive and very much dangerous. Admiral Vextar stared in complete shock as his easy prey transformed before his 4 eyes. The primitive human, Relic, had become something else entirely. It was now a sleek, deadly hunter that radiated power and menace like a living thing. "Impossible," he whispered in disbelief. Captain Morrison's voice suddenly echoed across all communication channels, speaking in perfect Zephyrian language. "Attention, Zephyrian fleet. You are violating human territorial space. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences of your actions." Vextar's shock quickly turned to burning rage. A single human ship, no matter how cleverly disguised, could not threaten an entire Zephyrian battle fleet. His pride would not allow such an insult. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy that vessel, completely." Morrison shook his head sadly, as if disappointed by the Admiral's choice. Some species never learn from their mistakes. "Ryan, show them why humans are considered dangerous throughout the galaxy." The USS Liberty's first shot was a perfect demonstration of surgical precision that left the entire Zephyrian fleet stunned and confused. The quantum disruption cannon fired a single, focused pulse that passed through the shields of Admiral Vextar's flagship like they were not even there. The beam surgically disabled the ship's primary weapon systems without harming a single crew member. "That was a warning shot," Morrison announced calmly. "The next one will not be so gentle. Withdraw your forces now." But Admiral Vextar had invested too much pride and reputation to back down now. The idea of retreating from a single human vessel was unthinkable. "All ships, concentrate all firepower on that human ship. Reduce it to space dust." Morrison let out a long, tired sigh. "Amy, route power to all combat systems. Ryan, you are cleared to engage with full force. Show them what happens when you corner a human warship." The USS Liberty began to move like nothing the Zephyrians had ever seen before. One moment, she was floating still like a dead rock. The next, she was dancing through space with impossible grace. Her adaptive engines allowed maneuvers that seemed to break the laws of physics. Plasma bolts that should have vaporized her passed harmlessly through empty space as the ship shifted between dimensions, using quantum movement technology that the Zephyrians could not even detect, much less understand or counter. Ryan Clark was coordinating weapon systems that struck with surgical precision, disabling enemy vessels without destroying them completely. "Phantom torpedoes launching now," he reported with professional calm. The Zephyrian fleet suddenly found itself under attack by weapons they could not see. Their most advanced sensors showed nothing, but their ships were taking precise damage. Engines stopped working, weapon systems shut down, and shields failed, but life support remained intact. It was a demonstration of technology so advanced that it might as well have been magic to the confused aliens. Admiral Vextar watched in growing horror as his mighty battle fleet was systematically taken apart by a single human vessel. Ships that had conquered dozens of star systems were being reduced to floating hulks by an enemy they could not even target effectively. "How is this possible?" he demanded frantically. "Our intelligence said humans were a primitive, backward species." Commander Ziflak's voice was tight with fear. "Sir, we may have been operating with very outdated information. This vessel is showing technology far beyond anything in our databases or previous encounters. The USS Liberty was just getting started. And the Zephyrians were about to learn that their worst nightmare had only just begun." What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy as the Battle of Kepler's Rest. Though many would argue it was not really a battle when one side won so completely and easily. The USS Liberty moved through space like a deadly dancer. One moment she was floating still like a piece of junk. The next she was spinning and diving through space with impossible grace. Her adaptive engines let her make moves that seemed to break the laws of physics. Plasma bolts that should have destroyed her passed through empty space as the ship shifted between dimensions, using quantum movement technology that the Zephyrians could not even see, much less fight against. Captain Morrison stood calmly on his bridge, watching his crew show why human military engineering was feared throughout known space. Amy Foster was sending power through systems that changed themselves faster than the enemy could adjust their targeting. Ryan Clark was controlling weapon systems that struck with perfect precision, disabling enemy ships without destroying them completely. Phantom torpedoes firing, Clark reported with professional calm. The Zephyrian fleet found itself under attack by weapons they could not detect. Their most advanced sensors showed nothing, but their ships were taking damage. Precise strikes disabled engines, weapon systems, and shields while leaving life support working perfectly. It was a demonstration of technology so advanced that it seemed like magic to the confused aliens. Admiral Vextar watched in growing terror as his battle fleet was systematically taken apart by a single human vessel. Ships that had conquered dozens of star systems were being reduced to floating hulks by an enemy they could not even target properly. "How is this happening?" he screamed frantically. "Our intelligence report said humans were a primitive, backward species." Commander Ziflak's voice shook with fear. "Sir, we may have been using very old and incorrect information. This vessel is showing technology far beyond anything we have ever encountered before." The USS Liberty's quantum disruption cannon fired, again, this time targeting the flagship's communication systems. The beam passed through the ship's shields as if they were made of paper, surgically removing the fleet's ability to coordinate their attacks without harming a single crew member. Morrison activated the general communication channel so all the alien ships could hear him. "Admiral Vextar, you have lost 6 ships and have not managed to scratch our hull even once. Your weapons cannot pierce our defenses, your sensors cannot track our movements, and your shields cannot stop our weapons. This is your final warning. Withdraw from human space immediately, or face complete destruction." But Vextar's pride and desperation drove him to attempt one last desperate attack. "All remaining ships ramming speed. If we cannot shoot it down, we will crash into it and destroy it that way." Morrison shook his head sadly. "Some people have to learn things the hard way. Ryan, activate defensive pattern Omega." What happened next would be whispered about throughout the Zephyrian Empire for many generations to come. The USS Liberty simply vanished, not from sensors, not from visual contact, but from reality itself. The remaining Zephyrian ships found themselves trying to ram empty space while the human vessel appeared behind them, above them, around them. The Liberty struck from impossible angles with weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics completely. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Zephyrian battle fleet had been reduced to helpless hulks drifting in space. Not a single crew member had been killed, but every ship was completely disabled and powerless. The USS Liberty hung in space among the wreckage like a predator surveying its defeated prey. Admiral Vextar found himself staring at a communication screen showing the human captain's face. Morrison looked calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying in his quiet confidence. "Admiral," Morrison said politely, Your fleet has been neutralized completely. Your crews are unharmed, and rescue vessels will arrive within 6 hours. Consider this a valuable learning experience. The next time you encounter a human vessel, remember that appearances can be very deceiving indeed. Amy Foster's voice carried from somewhere off-screen. Captain, we are receiving multiple distress calls from across this sector. Apparently word of our awakening has spread throughout the local systems. Morrison nodded thoughtfully. Set course. For Earth, Amy. It is time we reported back home and found out what has been happening while we were asleep. As the USS Liberty prepared to leave, Admiral Vextar managed to find his voice again. Wait. What exactly are you? Morrison's expression grew serious and thoughtful. We are reconnaissance, Admiral. This ship was built to observe and gather intelligence about potential threats. What you have witnessed today is what happens when you threaten a human scout ship. You really do not want to discover what our actual warships are capable of doing. The USS Liberty faded from view as her adaptive stealth systems made her invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Within a few hours, rescue ships arrived to collect the survivors of the battle fleet. Within days, word had spread throughout the Zephyrian Empire and far beyond its borders. The humans were back in this sector of space, and they were far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined possible. Admiral Vexatar spent the rest of his military career making sure that Zephyrian forces kept a respectful distance from human territory. The primitive species that had once been dismissed as backward newcomers had demonstrated capabilities that suggested they had been deliberately hiding their true technological strength for many years. The USS Liberty continued her journey toward Earth, her crew awakening to a galaxy that had changed dramatically during their century of sleep. But one thing remained exactly the same. The human ability to surprise, adapt, and survive against impossible odds had not diminished even slightly. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed as distant or threatening as they once had. Behind him, his crew worked with the quiet efficiency that had made human reconnaissance missions legendary throughout known space. Atlas, he said quietly, remind me to recommend that the next generation of scout ships be built with even better stealth
capabilities than we have. Noted, Captain.
Though based on current intelligence reports, most species in this sector now consider any encounter with a human vessel to be a significant threat to their safety. Morrison smiled with satisfaction. Excellent. Fear keeps people honest and respectful, and honest people do not attack ships they do not understand. The USS Liberty disappeared into the vast darkness of space, carrying with her the knowledge that humanity's reputation as a force to be respected and feared had been thoroughly restored. The galaxy had learned once again that underestimating humans was a mistake that very few species ever made twice. And in the depths of space, other ancient human vessels began receiving automated wake-up calls. Their long slumber was ending as the galaxy prepared for humanity's return to the galactic stage. The age of human expansion and exploration was about to begin again with renewed vigor. This time, the galaxy would be ready and waiting. And this time, they would show the proper respect that humanity had always deserved but rarely received. News of the Battle of Kepler's Rest spread like wildfire through the galactic communication networks. Within weeks, every major species had updated their databases with new threat assessments for human vessels. The old files marked primitive technology were replaced with warnings marked extreme caution advised. The sleeping giant had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Captain Morrison looked at the star charts showing their route home to Earth. After more than a century of sleep, it was time to see how much humanity had grown and changed. But one thing was certain: the human spirit of exploration, determination, and survival had remained strong. The USS Liberty flew toward home, leaving behind a legend that would be told for generations. The aliens had scoffed at the old relic floating in space. They had learned too late that some relics have very sharp teeth indeed.